We have some massive news coming out here regarding the Las Vegas Raiders guard Jackson Powers-Johnson, and today we're going to talk about it. Plus, there's a couple other updates that are coming out that I want to get into. Jakobi Meyers, interesting situation that kind of happened when it came to the trade. Plus, there's a rumor coming out from Mike Florio regarding Chip Kelly, which we'll also kind of get into. First and foremost, let's talk about this. So, Jackson Powers-Johnson has officially suffered an ankle injury, and according to Ian Rappaport, Jackson Powers-Johnson suffered an ankle injury that will land him on injured reserve, and this could potentially end his season, sources say. This was expected, as Coach Pete Carroll said post-game, he'll be out a while. Still a big blow to the group. So, obviously, Ian Rappaport is kind of confirming some of what, Pete Carroll had already kind of told us this, right? Now, Pete didn't know at that time exactly what it was. And according to what Ian Rappaport is saying, is he's basically saying it's an ankle injury that's going to land him on injured reserve. Now, keeping in mind, IR means at least 4 weeks, which basically takes you to the end of the season, right? It takes you to, I believe, week 14. I believe week 15 will be the week he can come back. So at this point, you're going into the final 2 or 3 games. This guy may be able to come back, but, I think at this point, the Raiders should just consider keeping him out for the rest of the season. The Raiders aren't making the playoffs. We're not going to win the Super Bowl this season. And I think for the Raiders, the best thing you can do is figure out some of the younger guys, which guys could potentially step up and actually allow you to have success. Now, of course, if the Raiders do win games, it will impact the Raiders as they kind of go forward. Right, on one end, you're going to have a lower draft stock. On the other side of it, maybe you win a couple games, you have a little bit of momentum going into next season. But I think more than all that, the biggest benefit the Raiders could have here is figuring out which offensive lineman needs to be replaced at what point. Now, we already know Alex Kappa's not the future. Alex Kappa should be released at the end of the season. Will he actually be released? Probably not. But I think what the Raiders can do is at least figure out if Caleb Rogers as well as Charles Grant have anything in their game potentially, right? Can either of those two guys at any point, be able to kind of put it together? If you guys remember, Dylan Parham also went down in that game on Thursday Night Football. If you guys don't know, Dylan Parham, and this isn't 100% official, but Dylan Parham has what is believed to be a high ankle sprain as well, so he's probably out, 4 to 8 weeks. I think at this point the Raiders have to figure out what they have with Caleb Rogers. They have to figure out what they have with Charles Grant, and those guys may naturally play anyways, given the fact that you have 2 guards out at this point. But we could also not see Charles Grant. We might even just see Caleb Rogers, or I could even see the Raiders saying, "Hey, we're going to go forward with Will Putnam instead, who's the second-year guard, as well as Alex Kappa." Which was actually the 2 guys that they ended up using last week anyways in that game. But again, I think for the Raiders, you have to think about the future at this point. And more than just the future, you get better by actually going out there and playing. And which way better than for Caleb Rogers to have an opportunity to show us what he has? Now, this next game coming up on Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys, this might not be a great game to put your young guys in, right? The Cowboys traded for Quinnen Williams, phenomenal defensive tackle, one of the best in the NFL. They already had Kenny Clark, who came over in that Michael Parsons trade. And a lot of people don't know who Osa Odigizua is, but he's one of the highest paid defensive tackles in the NFL as well. So the Cowboys have 3 really, really good defensive tackles. And the Raiders are about to go out there with Alex Kappa, Jordan Meredith, and some combination of Will Putnam or Caleb Rogers. The Raiders are in trouble, man. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think one of the things the Raiders have to realistically consider going into this next matchup is potentially moving DJ Glaze to the inside. And I saw some people already kind of talk about this, but, I would feel much more confident with DJ Glaze jumping to the inside and actually putting Charles Grant at that right tackle position. I feel much more comfortable with that. Now, one of the things we have to realize is Glaze could be a better option at guard than Will Putnam. Now, Putnam's young, he's physical, he's tough, but he's not ready. He's a year, 2, 3 out potentially, and I don't even know what the upside on Putnam is, to be honest with you guys. But I think for the Raiders, it would be smart to potentially move DJ Glaze to the inside. Because we also kind of saw DJ Glaze get his ass kicked a little bit against Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper and some of those other guys that play for the Denver Broncos. And I'm not saying this means the DJ Glaze experiment at right tackle is over, but I think it'd be smart for the Raiders to figure out what you have in a guy like Charles Grant. Put him in there at right tackle. Yes, he's changing positions. He has to go from left to right, but get him ready. Let him go out there. The Cowboys' edge players aren't great anyways, at least this season, right? They're not great. They're okay, right? Jadeveon Clowney's pretty good, but they're not like super, super, super great. I think it'd be the best thing the Raiders can do going into this matchup. You're putting DJ Glaze to the inside. And another thing to kind of keep in mind, I think Stone Forsythe at this point is actually better than DJ Glaze. In my opinion, I think he is better, right? And for the Raiders, you just kind of keep Forsythe there at left tackle until Colt Miller comes back, if he does it this season. If not, it is what it is, right? The season's not going well anyways. But I think for the Raiders, this could actually put you in place to figure out what you have with some of the younger guys. And it could technically still be the best unit that we may actually have out there. I think for the Raiders, you have to realistically consider switching DJ Glaze to the inside, not only just for this game, right, because it's going to benefit you this game, but like long term, seeing what Charles Grant has, I think will give the Raiders the best opportunity. Now, we're not going to do it, right? Let's just be honest. We're not going to do it. Most likely, DJ Glaze stays at right tackle. Most likely, the Raiders go with Alice Kappa at right guard. And I think that left guard, they'll probably go with Will Putnam, but it is kind of unfortunate that the Raiders are going to roll forward with this unit as you go forward because it doesn't really provide us any benefit going into next season. Now, of course, the Raiders will try to win some games. Mike Florio actually put something really interesting out there. And, it's just a rumor, so like none of this really is guaranteed or confirmed. But he had some interesting things to say, essentially, right? Mike Florio said the following. He said, I wonder how the coaching staff for the Raiders will change after this season. There has been some talk, and I don't know what's accurate or not. Tom Brady is not going to text me and tell me. And I don't have the keys to the inner sanctum. But if Chip Kelly is a Brady guy, and I don't know how all this plays out at the end of the season. He also went out there and said the following. Pete Carroll was one and done 31 years ago into Jets. And we see one and done, like when one and done happens, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And then I pull up our story with all the one and dones from the past 10 years, and it happens a lot. So I just don't know where this is going for the Raiders, and I wonder what Tom Brady thinks. A lot of people have said that Tom Brady is the guy making decisions for the Raiders at this point, especially when it comes to like the coaching decisions and, not necessarily roster decisions, but like in terms of the direction of the Raiders, it's kind of on Tom Brady. And if the Raiders wanted to start a rebuild, if Tom Brady said to do it, the Raiders would have. And I know John Spytek's the general manager, but the general manager does a lot of different things. Right? There's so many different roles that a general manager can take. From scouting the players coming out of the NFL draft, to scouting the players that are currently in the NFL, to scouting the players in the CFL, the UFL, from making decisions, in terms of like the scheduling and the day-to-day and, just there's so many things you have to do as a general manager. And of course, you task it out to people, but like apparently the general direction of the Raiders is for Tom Brady to make. And it is an interesting point that Mike Florio's essentially making. What he's saying is, we don't know if Chip Kelly will be here going into next season because we don't know if Chip Kelly is a Tom Brady guy or not. We also don't know if Pete Carroll's a Tom Brady guy or not. And it is an interesting thought. If let's say Tom Brady does not like Pete Carroll as a coach, if Tom Brady sees what we all kind of see, right? And let's just be 100% honest, Pete Carroll does not look like that good of a coach at this point. Yeah, you can tell, he plays conservative. He wants to keep the game close. And, I understand that thought process. It's like Harbaugh wants to play conservative, wants to keep the game close. And I understand that that's what Pete Carroll wants to do. And I see it, right? I see that's what the Raiders are trying to do. They're trying to be conservative. But Pete Carroll doesn't do anything that's elite, right? He doesn't run an elite defense. He doesn't run an elite offense. He's always going to be dependent on his coordinators. And as we found out this year, it just doesn't look good, right? It really does not look good from a scheme perspective. The offense, if Chip Kelly is truly running everything on the offensive side, which is kind of what it looks like, well, does Chip Kelly like this group of offensive linemen? Would Chip Kelly start DJ Glaze at right tackle or Jackson Powers-Johnson at guard? We don't know, right? We really don't know. And it just kind of makes you think, what are the Raiders going to do as they go forward? Are they going to just roll forward with the same coaching staff? And I do think that probably makes the most sense, to be honest, right? I don't think it's smart to fire your coaching staff every single season. But I have more faith in Chip Kelly than I do Pete Carroll. Me personally, I have more faith in Chip Kelly than I do Pete Carroll. And I say that because I know Chip Kelly hasn't been great this season. But Chip Kelly has designed some good plays, right? He's done a good job in certain moments. And don't overlook the limitations that Chip Kelly's working with out there. Our offensive line is a bottom 5 offensive line. And I say this all the time. This is crazy because I feel like, it's kind of overlooked sometimes. Having a great offensive line makes a huge difference. And the Raiders haven't had a great offensive line in years. 2016 was the last time, right? That it was like 2014 to 2017-ish, right? We added some pieces, right? Like we had Rodney Hudson, we had Gabe Jackson. Eventually we had Kelechi Osemele and Donald Penn comes over as well, right? The Raiders, that was the last great offensive line we've kind of had, and it's always just kind of gotten worse and worse and worse. And I think 2018 was pretty bad, but it probably got worse as we kind of continued. And now we have Jordan Meredith and Alex Kappa starting, right? So it's not worse in the last 10 years than it is right now for the Raiders, in my opinion. So there are real limitations that the Raiders have on that offensive line. And I think the best thing the Raiders can do is keep Chip Kelly going into next season. But I think it's very important that they actually get difference makers on the offensive line. And I say they should get difference makers, but there's also a chance that we have some guys that could be difference makers. And we don't really know. You know, I do think if you're being honest and you're really looking at this offensive line, you know, I think just doing a couple of tweaks could make this offensive line really, really good. Obviously, Jackson Powers-Johnson has to be healthy, but putting him at center, I think, would make a huge difference for the offensive line. I think the center can make such a big difference from that middle position when it comes to the run game. Having Colt Miller healthy, I think, would obviously benefit the Raiders. And the thing that we don't really know is going to be Charles Grant. Is Charles Grant the future for the Raiders at right tackle, or is he not? Because DJ Glaze is definitely not the future. And if you guys don't see that, go watch his tape. DJ Glaze is not the future for the Raiders at right tackle. He'll always have losing snaps no matter what. You'll play some, top-tier pass rusher, and DJ Glaze can give up 3 sacks. To me, I think there's hope with Charles Grant. I see the upside. I see the potential. And I don't know if we're going to actually see him out there this season, but I would hope the Raiders throw Charles Grant out there at right tackle. And I think with that, you can also see if DJ Glaze is the future at guard. I think there's a chance he is. I think there's a real chance. DJ Glaze, who's strong, who's powerful, who's physical, I think there's a real chance he could be a really good guard. So think about what happens just making a couple of changes. Charles Grant, I think, has the upside, and I have more faith in Charles Grant working at right tackle than any of the other guys. You put Charles Grant at right tackle, you put DJ Glaze at right guard, JPJ when healthy at center, Colt Miller at left tackle. That could be 4 of your 5 starters right there going into next season, right? So hopefully the Raiders can actually kind of think this through and make some of these changes as they kind of get into it. I would roll forward with Chip Kelly. I'd roll forward with Pete Carroll, although I'm not as high on Pete Carroll. And I think the Raiders just got to continue to try to win some games, man. We'll see what ends up happening. Let's wrap it up. There's a interesting video that's kind of trended a little bit on Twitter. So all our Raider fans kind of talking about it. I want you guys to watch this, and then we'll talk about this on the other side, and we'll get into the report.
Jakobi, welcome to the AFC South. What's
that.
your level of comfort and command with this offense after just a few days in Jacksonville?
I mean, I'm not all the way there, but I get an opportunity to go out there, run fast, and hit somebody hard. So just call whatever. If I figure it out, I figure it out. If I don't, I'll play fast and go handle my business.
How do you plan to impact this game in your first game?
Be supportive to my teammates, block when I can, and make all the plays that come my way. So
Appreciate it, and happy birthday.
appreciate that. And shout out to my boys in Vegas, man. It's going to turn around. Y'all boys keep playing hard, bro. I love y'all boys, miss y'all boys, but you got to enjoy this game today, for sure.
So there you guys have it, right? Like right at the end there, Jakobi Meyers just kind of throws it out there. Shout out to my boys in Vegas. Love you guys. Miss you guys. You can see there's a couple other things, but to me, Jakobi Meyers, one of the best character players you could potentially bring in. He wasn't asked about the Raiders at all, and he just had to kind of throw it out there. I love hearing that from Jakobi, man. I really do hope the Jaguars do end up paying him. There was a report that the trade happened without an actual contract in place, so there's a chance he doesn't end up getting paid with the Jags. So I do hope they end up paying him. I do hope he ends up getting the money that he deserves. Also, I hope the Jags continue to win for Jakobi's sake, right? I hope he finds success there as a football player. But there is another interesting report related to Jakobi Meyers and that trade that happened. So this report actually comes from a Pittsburgh Steelers sports reporter, Andrew Filipponi. Said it on the Pat McAfee show, and it was that the Raiders had the exact same offer on the table for Jakobi Meyers from both the Jaguars and the Steelers. Apparently, Jakobi Meyers got to choose where he wanted to go, seeing as both options were superior AFC foes, and the Raiders would have gotten the same picks back in either scenario. And then Jakobi Meyers obviously chose Jacksonville, likely due to the connection with Edgar Bennett. This one's interesting, right? Because the Raiders could have gotten either the Steelers or the Jags picks. And what's interesting about those two teams' picks is the fact that the Raiders, if you think about it, and both teams had like a similar record, but I would say the Jags are probably going to finish higher and finish better than where the Steelers will. And we kind of saw the Steelers get beat up yesterday on Sunday Night Football. For the Raiders, it would have actually benefited them, right? They'd move up a couple slots. They would have probably benefited from making the trade to the Steelers as opposed to the Jags. But they ended up taking the Jags offer because that's where Jakobi Meyers wanted to go. Think about this. The Raiders are giving up some draft capital, essentially, right? And I know the picks are the same, but depending on where it's at, it could be a high fourth or a low fourth. The Raiders still allowed Jakobi Meyers to make that pick. And I just want to give a shout out to John Spytek for actually doing that. Because believe it or not, there's some people that will not do that. There are some people that'll tell a player that, hey, we're not sending you to this team or that team. We're not sending you over there, right? We're going to give you two options. Pick a team. And the Raiders did not take that approach, right? They did not hardball with Jakobi on where he could ultimately go. And we don't know the actual, the contract negotiations that happened between Jakobi and John Spytek. Something that I heard, and I do believe this person, I think that they've been very solid in the past. So something that I've heard about Jakobi and the Raiders situation was not that the Raiders didn't want to pay Jakobi because of the fact that, hey, we just don't think he's a good wide receiver. They didn't want to pay Jakobi because they just felt that, hey, we don't have the money to ultimately make this happen, right? When it comes to some of the guys we're going to have to sign over the next couple of years, we don't have the money. Also realize the Raiders have almost $90 million in dead cap. That's going to put you at a disadvantage if you're the Raiders, right? So again, to me, this wasn't we don't think you're a good enough player. It was just more so, hey, we just feel like we don't have the cap to make it happen. We have other players that we're going to have to pay here soon. Brock Bowers eventually will have to get paid. Jackson Powers-Johnson will eventually have to get paid. Maxx Crosby, I know he signed a new contract, but his contract's not guaranteed that long. He'll need a bonus. He'll need a new contract probably in 2 seasons from now. The Raiders have a lot of cap invested in a lot of different positions, and we still have a ton of weaknesses. I think for the Raiders, you kind of understand that wide receiver is not a huge. It's not a position you want to put a lot of money into right now, right? You have a lot of other positions that need to kind of be corrected. Almost $90 million in dead caps can obviously hinder you as well. So, I do believe what this guy's telling me about how the situation kind of played out, which also makes sense why Jakobi Meyers wasn't disgruntled and angry about the entire situation, right? He's still super respectful. He still showed up and he was still willing to make it work essentially with the Raiders as long as he possibly could. To me, it tells me John Spytek actually had this guy. He actually told this guy exactly what's happening and what's going to eventually happen, right? I'm pretty sure Spytek knew that we're going to trade you probably within a week before the trade deadline ends up coming, right? So shout out to Jakobi Meyers. I hope it ends up working out for him. I hope he ends up getting the contract he deserves. Just wanted to kind of provide you guys that update. Let me know what you guys think, man. What are your guys' thoughts on JPJ? What are some of the things that you guys feel about this Raiders team? Obviously, JPJ is out. Dylan Parham looks like it's going to be a high ankle injury as well. So we'll see what ends up happening. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.